Okay, Rachel, thank you for meeting with me. So let's go through the last observation that we had, and tell me just a little bit about your thinking as far as how it went, just general thoughts.
Sure. I felt pretty good about the lesson itself, especially considering the kids came straight from their park test.
Poor things. Poor babies.
But because of that, I knew that week that I needed to design a lesson that was more physical, a lesson that was going to get them up and moving. The last thing they needed was be writing or doing more independent work. I wanted to design something that would be a little bit more fun and a little bit more interactive.
Yeah, so getting them up out of their seats, give them a chance to get all of their energy out, especially after park testing. And that's so vital, especially with those kiddos. They've been testing for how many weeks was it at that point?
So that was why I decided to do my whole melodrama unit during that time.
Smart. I think that's smart, right? Those kiddos need a chance to relax and have fun. So tell me about how you came up with the idea of the melodrama tag that you had them do.
Yeah, so I use a resource that's called Drama Notebook, and they have a lot of really good ideas. And she had kind of like a melodrama lesson plan, and I kind of went through and picked and chose what I thought the kids would be able to do and handle. So the week before, we had just studied just features of melodrama, the fact that it was over the top, that we looked at 3 of the stock characters. There are tons of stock characters in melodrama, but I only had them look at 3. So we looked at the villain, the damsel, and the hero. And that week I taught them like a rock, paper, scissors game to do with those characters to kind of help them learn that the hero always wins. So the hero always beats the villain.
And you came up with that on your own?
I didn't actually. I stole it from
I was like, that was a great idea.
I wish. Yeah, and then the villain beats the damsel, so they can kind of get that dynamic down for how the stories always go. And then the hero beats the damsel, and that was kind of the damsel beats the hero. So that was kind of the tricky one, because kids were like, I don't understand. Like, well, the hero always falls in love with the damsel, and that's why the damsel always wins. So, but after that, we just talked about some of the emotions, so that next week we learned the melodrama poses. So one of the other features of melodrama is that when the characters come on stage and show an emotion, they have to strike a certain pose.
Which leads on what you were doing with like the what is it called?
It was slow motion freeze.
Turning out, or what is it?
Cheating out.
Cheating out. I knew it was an out.
Yeah.
It's like a door out.
Yeah. So so they started to learn some of those poses again. I just kind of wanted to give them some exposure to melodrama. I wasn't going to go through every single stock character and every single pose, because that's just
too much. Yeah.
So we just looked at those 3. And then the way that I was able to kind of have them check each other for understanding, because the villain can tag them, they have to pose in one of those 3 emotional poses. Only the hero can save them, but the hero can't save them unless they're in the right pose. So if they're doing a different pose, then they have to stay frozen. The hero can give them that feedback to adjust the pose. So it kind of helped them sort of assess each other if they were doing the poses correctly.
There's a lot of extensions that can go in that too. You know, when students are reading books and then they see, or they read, when they read that a person is crossing their arms or whatever else it is, and they can put together from drama. So there's a lot of nice connections that can happen from that too.
Right.
And then they can better understand the emotion behind it too, and what that looks like to better infer. So I think it had a lot of great extensions and something that we can use in the classroom as well as drama. So take me through, so this was only a partial. And so I scored on I-5 through I-8. So let's look at I-5 first. And since you have it up, I'm gonna let you do that while this is
perfect.
Oh, technology. Okay. So then I-5 is that checks for understanding. So talk to me about your checks for understanding.
So going through the we do, I guess we should say, of the I do, we do. I was able to just visually assess whether they were gathering the poses or not, because we were doing them all together as a group. So, for example, I saw a lot of kids, when I said anger, there's a specific way you're supposed to do it in melodrama, but I would see kind of kids maybe show me a different way to show anger, and I would just adjust that in the moment, kind of remind them and explain to them there's only one way we do it in melodrama. There might be many ways we do it in life or in other plays, but in melodrama, this is the only way that we show it. So kind of gave me a chance to make those little adjustments. We went through those together. And then, like I said, I chose to be the hero, which I would always kind of pick somebody that got it right away because I needed somebody who knew the poses.
So that differentiation that was happening there.
Yeah. So that person would check in, give them feedback, and then they could unfreeze them if they fixed it.
Right. So that's something I noticed as well, especially, so that's why I gave it a 6. In order to get to that next level, we really want to see kids kind of referring back to that CLO. But they were demonstrating it. You were in there. You were talking to them about their CLO. You were walking around. You were giving that feedback. You're saying, here's how we show it in melodrama, those kinds of things. So that was an area of strength for yours in this lesson, I thought. Always coming back to it. And then, so it was not just in physical, it was in physical form or that demonstration piece. And so that was what was strong. And it's not just always in writing form like we're used to in literacy type of stuff. So that was fantastic.
Well, and especially because that particular class was ELA S.
Yeah.
So when kids were responding and they were explaining to me what a pose was, I knew it was going to be a little difficult for them to explain to me verbally what it was.
Right.
And I think it was maybe Sebastian who actually showed me a
he
pose.
did.
And I mean, those are answers that I accept. If they're physical answers, he's showing me what it is.
Absolutely, especially in an ELA-S classroom, especially knowing that it's drama, which is really just about showing that physical. So I thought that was fantastic. Any questions on I-5 for me?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so then I-6. I just lost my place. So you have it there.
Yes.
So this is that grade level content, provides that differentiation. So now that we've talked about how you said that you, tell me about that differentiation you just used again.
Using my higher level kids, casting them as active language, casting them as my hero, and maybe even, and using that higher level kid that I know can give that feedback and that isn't just going to unfreeze people because they're frozen, because then that kind of that makes the whole lesson break down.
Right.
So finding those people that are higher level, and when they're receiving that feedback, I mean, I played this game again the next week, and I was able to choose from more kids to be my hero because they received that feedback and they were on the right track for where they needed to be.
So you're really cognizant of who you chose, so then the feedback could be greater and they could really hold each other accountable to that. So because of that, I'd like to change your score to a 6, having that conversation with you, knowing that you were really actively planning for that kind of stuff, getting kids to show, give feedback, things like that. The kinesthetic experiences. So I'd like to adjust that if that's, I mean, is that okay?
That would be wonderful.
You're like, I don't know. Let me think about that.
That would be
great. Okay, so then, so I'm going to change that one. Let me write a note for myself. Okay, and then I-7, which is feedback. Yeah. So on this one, talk to me about your feedback.
Sure. So feedback that I was providing in the moment would be, again, physical feedback, because sometimes all I need to do is just show them and they can adjust it. I don't need to describe to them, oh, lift your fists up toward shoulder. Like, they can watch me do it and they know how to fix it. So kind of being that mirror, and then again, utilizing other students to provide feedback to each other too.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a strength of yours, is the modeling behind it. So you took the time up at the front where you were like, okay, so here's what I'm saying, but it needs to be either this or this. And those motions are what kids had the option for, and that was the feedback that you gave to them. Kids were giving each other feedback. So I thought that was fantastic. The one thing we want to, maybe to get us to that next level, is really thinking about how we can get kids to not only demonstrate it, but also talk about it.
Sure.
So here's why I chose this, or here's why this works, or just have one of your higher kids, if you need to, explain why that person won or whatever it is. That'll really help with that descriptive feedback and those next steps. That's one of the big components here, is like, what is the next step?
Right.
So if this is what you're doing, how do I progress to the next level for kiddos?
Sure.
But other than that, I thought it was fantastic. Lots of feedback, lots of descriptive feedback, even though it wasn't necessarily with words, it was with modeling. And for kids, that's especially in drama,
Mhm.
right? Because we can tell them all we want, but if I can show them, it's a much better picture for
Right.
them. Okay, so then I-8, which then is our communication and collaboration. Tell me about your communication and collaboration with students.
Perfect. So I'm looking at, it's saying utilizing appropriate digital resources. So looking at that piece of it, knowing I was going to have an ELAS class, I made sure that I also had the Spanish words up there.
Yep, you did.
The emotions as well,
Right.
and lots of visuals of what the poses should look like. So not only was I modeling those, but those were up on the board as well. And then I think just the nature of the activity itself was collaborative. So they had to work together as a class. They had to work together with that feedback piece. They couldn't get unfrozen and play again until they did the pose right. So they had to make sure that they got it correct.
Right. And you had the warm-up too, where they were doing that rock, paper, scissors with the damsel and the villain and the hero.
So they were working together in partners for that, reviewing those three stock
lots
characters.
of collaboration. We want to make sure that they all have an opportunity to switch it up. And so I saw a lot of that. You're right on the digital thing. If we could think about maybe using some examples and having them up as a visual reminder for them, that might help out. Digital doesn't always have to be on the computer, right? It can just be like a picture. And how does that help them? So a story that they know, what's a common story that?
Probably, I mean, any sort of fairy tale or something like that. Part of the lesson plan that I looked at, I was trying to figure out how to apply it. They had like examples of characters in movies that they would know that might fit some of the stock characters. Something I thought about after the fact was even playing music that might be associated with those emotions. So every time they heard that music striking that pose, because music is a big part of melodrama too, and that's a feature that we talked about. So that could have been something that I could have incorporated, which of course, you think about those things after the fact.
Of course, that always happens. That's a great idea. You could even do where you play it and they have to strike that pose for it as a quick review. That's a great idea. So then just giving them those resources where they can check back to something as, so then that goes back with your feedback too. So we can say, well, let's look at this picture, or you're doing this action. I'm going to refer you back to this one. What does that look like? And then they have something that they can refer back to. Or when they're in collaboration, then they can use those resources as well. So that might be our next step then. So how are you feeling about all of this?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The one thing, and again, I know they were testing, so it's really hard, but it got really loud and crazy in here, right?
Especially because it's melodrama. Well, in some of those lessons, I chose to actually either take them outside, or I chose to if Mr. Knight's room was open or the gym was open, I took them in there. Because melodrama is supposed to be loud, over dramatic and big.
And they've been testing. Those poor things are just exhausted, and they needed a chance to get it out. I think, was it cold that day? I don't remember.
It might have been. Yeah,
it's Colorado. It's hot.
Yeah.
So yeah, just one of those. It's a double-edged sword. We got to try and keep it quiet, but then we don't want them to be too quiet because that's part of the standard. So just a heads up on that. But other than that, I thought it was fantastic.
Perfect.
My next step is that I'm going to change the I6 to a 6.
Perfect.
And then I'll be back in, next week for a full. I know it's kind of a quick turnaround, but with the testing window and I've been out for pretty much a month with testing. So I'll come back in. If you have any questions or if you would like to pick anything on that you want some feedback on, let me know and I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you. Other than that, I'll be in next week.
Okay, perfect.
To see you.
That said, Monday and Tuesday are the only days that I will be in.
Yeah, because we have spring games. I call it field day a long time ago. It always changes. I never can get it right. It took me forever to change from TCAP, CSAP. It's horrible. Yes. And so we have spring games, and so we'll do Monday or Tuesday as well.
Friday, one of my best friends is graduating from the police academy, actually.
Oh, so that's so cool.
Graduation on Friday.
Okay, good to know. So I won't. That would just be mean anyway. So I'll come in Monday or Tuesday. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so much.